Game of Thrones Season 8 is about 1 month away. In 5 more Sundays, just imagine this 2 years has flown by. In 5 more Sundays, we are going to be able to sit down, grab a bucket of popcorn, grab some Kleenex, and begin watching one of the greatest shows of all time. In this video, I want to discuss some leaked episode descriptions as well as episode titles. I'm also going to get into some of the most recent information on Game of Thrones Season 8. As always, the leaked part of this video is meant to be taken with a grain of salt and is more or less for strictly entertainment purposes. Now here's your sign and let's begin. Before we get started, please slap a like on this video as the like goal is going to be 2,420. Also, make sure you're subscribed, and then this is the most important part. Make sure your notifications turned on so that way you get alerted every single time I drop a Game of Thrones video throughout this long night. With that trailer being released exactly 1 week ago today, the actors have already started their round of Season 8 interviews. Yesterday, Channel News Asia, which is a YouTube channel, released an interview with a bunch of the actors from Season 8, but one of the things of note to take away from that interview is a quote from Sophie Turner. And this was in response to being asked if she took anything away from the Game of Thrones set during her last day of filming. Now, just as a side note, a lot of the times when the cast members get interviewed, one of the most common questions asked is, did you take anything from the set? I actually asked Sybil Kikili this at the last Count of Thrones in 2018 down in Dallas, Texas, and she said she took the choker that she was killed with. Now, I feel like as interviewers, we need to do a better job of asking more in-depth questions, and if I get the chance to interview Nikolaj Coster-Waldau at this year's Count of Thrones 2019, drop below down some questions you want me to ask him. I feel like I was a bit unprepared last year when I was interviewing Shay, and I don't want to repeat that same mistake twice. I already plan on asking him if he finished after pushing Bran out of the window. But getting back on track here, Sophie Turner's response after being asked if she was able to take anything away from set on her last day of filming was she took a corset and she also took a scroll. Brian from Props gave it to me and he was like, here man, take this scroll. And she mentions that it was a massive spoiler for Game of Thrones Season 8, so she keeps it tucked away in her wallet so that no one can see it. Now, I'm a veteran. I'm a giant idiot, fanboy, nincompoop, whatever you want to call it, but I'm also a veteran. I've been making videos for Game of Thrones for 3 seasons now. Every single fucking season, these two like to make up some crazy spoiler that is meant to get everyone hyped up. So I'm not gonna fall for it this year, but I will sort of entertain the idea just for this video's sake. Now, when you associate scroll with Sansa, the first thing you think of is the scroll that was brought up in Game of Thrones Season 7. This is what caused turmoil between her and Arya. Back in Season 2, Sansa was basically forced to write a letter to Robb telling him to come and bend the knee to Joffrey. So if we're gonna play along with Maisie and Sophie's game here, then I guess that's what everyone would think of until you take into consideration the fact that she said it's a massive spoiler for Game of Thrones Season 8. Now, the contents of that scroll from Season 2 are in no way a spoiler for Season 8, so this means it has to be some sort of new scene, and whatever happens, it must be big because Brian from Props gave her the new scroll. Now, a while back, I was actually sent the leak through the DMs over on Twitter. Speaking of which, make sure you go follow me at Sir_Hunts. But this person stated that in Game of Thrones Season 8, Sansa plots with Tyrion in order to undermine Jon Snow and Daenerys' relationship. She doesn't want to overthrow them, but she does think that if the rest of the 7 kingdoms were to find out that Jon and Daenerys are aunt and uncle, then her and Tyrion agree that those kingdoms are less likely to join House Stark and House Targaryen in overthrowing Cersei. According to the leak, the two of them find out about Jon Snow's true parentage before Daenerys and the rest of the North know. Varys informs Tyrion, and Tyrion has a meeting with Sansa at the end of episode 2 where the two of them discuss the news. The conversation ends with the two of them agreeing that they must act and take care of Cersei quickly. Jon and Daenerys are going to be preoccupied with fortifying Winterfell and taking care of the army of the dead, that they're going to forget about the threat of Cersei to the south, and later in the season, Tyrion gets a bit of remorse and tries to send a letter to Cersei warning them of what's going to happen, but Sansa then of course intercepts this letter, and later on in the season, at the very end of the season rather, during Tyrion's trial, she uses this as evidence against him. Now, is it possible that the scroll that Sophie supposedly was given on her last day of filming is the same scroll that she uses as evidence against Tyrion Tyrion in his trial? Probably not, but if Sophie was in fact given a scroll, you guys let me know what you think down below was written on it. And one more quick thing I want to discuss before we get into the episode titles and descriptions. The main thing the trailers seem to focus around, and the main thing that they are liberally giving away spoilers for, is the Battle of Winterfell, or Game of Thrones Season 8 Episode 3. They want us to know that it's going to be the biggest battle anyone has ever seen in film and in television. They're telling us it took 55 nights long to film, and they're making us apparent that it's going to be the armies of the North versus the army of the dead. One thing they haven't liberally given away as a spoiler though is the fact that the Golden Company will show up in this battle at some point. I've been sent many different leaks, but some of them include Jon Snow being taken captive as a prisoner, Sansa, who's hiding out in the crypts of Winterfell, is taken as a captive, and one of them even included Arya taking the face of a Lannister soldier and traveling down to King's Landing in order to kill Cersei and free Sansa. Now the Golden Company did get a spot in the trailer. We got to see the back of Harry Strickland, but what's interesting is that once I thought were two shots of basically Euron and the Golden Company, is actually one shot of Euron and the Golden Company, and the first shot we get of these Greyjoy ships, that's actually Theon. If you look closely at the sails, there's no red dot apparent, or red crow's eye rather. Euron is famous for rocking this on his sails in combination with the Greyjoy house emblem. Now if you'll notice, we haven't really gotten much of Theon at all this season. There were a few promo images released of him, but he was not in this trailer aside from this one shot of his ships off in the distance. Last time we saw him in season 7, he was tracking Euron. Euron was sent on a mission to go and pick up the Golden Company from the free cities over in Essos. Last season, Melisandre also headed to Essos, to more specifically Volantis, which is the southernmost free city. I feel like the reason why we haven't seen Melisandre or Theon much in promotion is that the two of them are together on these ships in combination with the Fiery Hand. Now I'm not sure exactly what will go down over in Essos, but I do know that we'll likely get to see that country one last time before the show ends. The prequel series that's coming out next year is set to take place in more than just Westeros, so in my opinion it would be a good job to show a little bit more of Essos in this final season. I actually did a theory video about a year ago that mentioned that in Volantis, the one part we got to see was the actual bridge. The second thing the city is famous for is the giant fused black stone walls that protect the inner city. I linked that with the fact that we were shown by Sam on one of the books that he was flipping to when he realized that there's a huge cache of dragon glass on Dragonstone Island. He flips past this page that mentions how Valyrians of old, or Targaryens specifically, could manipulate dragon glass to do certain things. So I feel like if Melisandre is going over to Volantis to go and get maybe the Fiery Hand, maybe she could bring back some knowledge of how to make more than just crude weapons out of the dragon glass. But you guys let me know what you think about my speculation down below in the comments section. Now let's jump into the episode descriptions and titles. Now I'm just going to read these straight through and we'll pick them apart afterwards. The first episode is leaked to be called Winterfell, and the description reads as follows. Jon and Daenerys arrive in the north, alliances are solidified while enemies plot. The second episode is supposed to be called Enemies from the East, and the description reads as Cersei faces a new threat, Bran reveals several truths, and Winterfell prepares for war. In episode 3, this is, the one that we're all referring to as the Battle of Winterfell, is leaked to be called The Long Night, and the description reads as pretty simple. War comes to the north, and Sansa plays a game. Then the fourth episode of the season is going to be called A Time for Wolves, and the episode description reads, The North deals with the aftermath of the war, while Cersei receives an unexpected visitor. Then the fifth episode of the season is supposed to be called Children of the Dragon, while the description reads, A Way Out is revealed, Arya meets an old friend. And then the last and final episode of Game of Thrones Season 8 is leaked to be called A Dream of Spring, which ironically is, the last book's title. And the description reads that everything that begins must have an end. Now, to be honest, these are some of the more seemingly legit titles that I've actually been sent. I mean, just listing them off and not placing the episode number next to them, they sort of sound like something we've heard from Game of Thrones before. I mean, we have Winterfell, Enemies from the East, The Long Night, A Time for Wolves, Children of the Dragon, A Dream of Spring. We've all known that the last episode will most likely be called A Dream of Spring. It'll pay homage to the last novel that the show is based on, and A Time for Wolves was rumored to be the name of the last book, so it would be nice if we got some sort of tribute to that in the final season. We do know that for the most of this series, the Starks have been portrayed as the underdog. Since season 1, with Ned not wanting to leave Winterfell but being forced to do so because his friend is the king, the Starks always have to do stuff that no one else wants to do and end up getting shit on in the process. But one thing this show's famous for is making people who you hate turn into characters that you love, or making people who you think were initially good in the beginning turn out to be evil. It all carries along with the massive theme that nothing, even in the real world, is plain black or white. Everything is different shades of gray. Most things are in between and nothing can be fully labeled as one thing or another. another. For instance, the first season, we pretty much hate almost every single Lannister. We think Tyrion is funny, but he's still a bit of a douche. Then you enter season 2, 3, and 4, and then most of the Lannisters, aside from Cersei, start to change in your light. And honestly, even Cersei does a little bit. You start to feel for her more. You start to see the side that you didn't get to see the first 2 seasons, and that's that she's a decent mother to her children. What I'm getting at here is a lot of people, myself included, predict that the Starks coming into the endgame, whether it's in the TV show or in the books, may turn out to look somewhat like a villain. Even though it could be argued that their actions are justified, when you take a step back and look at it through a neutral lens, there will be several moments in A Time for Wolves or in the final season and in the final book where the Starks will somewhat look like a villain. Bringing this back around, I feel like if there is an episode titled A Time for Wolves in Game of Thrones season 8, then this may be the episode where the Starks don't come out looking like the good guys. I was sent the leak a few months back that mentioned how Sansa and Bran basically make it look as though the destruction of Daenerys' army is all Tyrion's fault. Their justification behind this is that if there is only one Lannister still alive, then the Starks can never be safe. And supposedly it's sort of a reversal of the whole leave one wolf alive and the sheeps are never safe. As far as the episode descriptions that I think are the most legitimate, well, the first one is definitely going to be somewhat accurate, if not dead on. I mean, Jon and Daenerys will arrive in the north, and alliances will most likely be solidified, and their enemies will always plot. As long as there are enemies that exist on the show, they will in fact be plotting against the good guys. We do know that if this description is legit, then the enemies it's referring to are most likely Cersei and Euron. Maybe even the Army of the Dead. We do know that the Night King planned on getting a dragon last season, so it would be nice to see if he plans on acquiring another one, or maybe do something mischievous like attacking from the actual crypts of Winterfell, the one place the Starks may think they're safe. Another description that I think is partially dead on is the one for the second episode, which was titled Enemies from the East, and that is that Bran reveals several truths and Winterfell prepares for war. If you're going by the season 8 trailer, it does look as though somehow Winterfell is aware of the threat of the dead. Most likely Bran sees them coming and is able to warn everyone in time, and this is why perhaps Winterfell does seem somewhat prepared for an onslaught of the dead. As far as the truth that he reveals is most likely going to be maybe how to defeat the Night King, maybe once and for all the final origins of the Night King, but most likely it's referring to the lineage of Jon Snow. I feel like it makes the most sense for it to happen in episode 2. We do know that this is going to be most likely the episode where they close a bunch of pre-existing plot lines from previous seasons, so if they do go along with that theme for episode 2, then revealing Jon Snow's true lineage, finally telling him this information, and then seeing how he reacts to it, there will be time for that in episode 2. I do think there's a small chance that they could include it at the end of episode 1, and then maybe episode 2 will likely show us what's going on over in Essos and with Melisandre and Theon. I just feel like that would be a little bit too rushed for the first episode. We do know the run times have been confirmed for the first 2 episodes at least, and the first one is going to be 54 minutes and the second one will be 58 minutes. So if they did try to squeeze in Jon Snow's lineage reveal in that first episode, we might be a little bit too tight on time for that to actually happen. The one title that I think is the least unlikely is Children of the Dragon. It just doesn't really make sense for that to be the 5th episode. I mean, the description is a way out is revealed and Arya meets an old friend, so nothing in that description really says anything about Jon and Daenerys, who we know are the last children of the dragon, so that really doesn't kind of fit in there. Although I do think it's kind of a cool title. Well, I mean, I guess it does kind of fit in with the Song of Ice and Fire. I do know that in Fire and Blood there was a chapter called Sons of the Dragon, and it focused on Aegon the Conqueror's children, so maybe if there is a title similar to this in the final season, maybe it will be the last episode, and it's the birth of Jon Snow and Daenerys' child. But we're getting kind of low on time for this video, so I want to quickly run through the episode titles and the descriptions, and you guys let me know what you think about them down below in the comment section. Episode 1 will be called Winterfell, and Jon and Daenerys arrive in the north, alliances are solidified while enemies plot. Episode 2 will be called Enemies from the East. Cersei faces a new threat. Bran reveals several truths. Winterfell prepares for war. Episode 3 will be called The Long Night. War comes to the north. Sansa play a game. Episode 4 will be titled, according to this leak anyway, A Time for Wolves. The North deals with the aftermath of the war, while Cersei receives an unexpected visitor. Episode 5 will be called Children of the Dragon. A way out is revealed, and Arya meets an old friend. Then the final episode, A Dream of Spring, and the description is, everything that begins must have an end. Alright, and with that being said, I want to thank you all so much for watching. If you could please, slap a like on this video, as the like goal is going to be 2,420. Also, make sure you're subscribed, and then this is the most important part, make sure every notification's turned on, so that way you get alerted every single time I drop a Game of Thrones video throughout this long night. A super special thank you to every single member of my Patreon family over on patreon.com/SirHuntsReviews, and a super special thank you to every single person watching this video. I want to thank you all again so much for for watching. My name's Mark, and this has been Sir Hunt's Reviews.